I think being able to, well, firstly, find out what's going on for them. So on a personal level, is there anything going on at home that might be affecting their work? I think often sometimes personal life can bleed into work, particularly when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, those kinds of things.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Plumm Pod, where we talk about all things HR and mental health. I'm your host, Georgia, founder of Access HR, and I'm joined by Holly Leckenby Rye on today's episode. We talk about building a high-performance team in a startup and what that actually looks like. There are some incredible tips and takeaway strategies in this episode. You do not want to miss it. But before you go, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. It allows us to keep these great conversations going and so that we are available to listen to every single week. Holly, hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. I know we are in similar community groups, so it's really nice to take that online, offline, and finally be in person for the first time as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's so exciting. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So first things first, before we get into today's episode, I really want to congratulate you and the team. It's quite a significant week when we're recording this podcast, as you are an employee at Lottie, and Lottie has just won the UK Startup of the Year 2025 with the Startup Index, which is incredible. And it's such a credit to all the hard work and the high performance team that you're building. When we first started talking, you were telling me around what's been a priority at Lottie, and I'd absolutely love for us to unpack all of that today and give you the floor. Before we do, a question that I like to ask every single guest on the podcast is, was HR part of the plan, or did it happen by chance?
For me, it definitely happened by chance. I think that's probably what most people say within HR. I did a geography degree, so completely different and not vocational in any sense of the word. I then went on and did a lot of different finance, assistant, office, PA type roles, and found myself in a charity, which I absolutely loved. It was amazing. And a space came open in the HR team, and my manager at the time thought I'd be really great for it. I loved helping people in my role. That's what I enjoyed doing, around like assisting various different stakeholders within the business. And so I thought, why not give it a go and see where it takes me? So I did my qualifications with them, and yeah, I'm here today. So yeah, very thankful for that opportunity.
For your career to date, what are the roles in terms of job title that you've had to get you to where you are now in your career?
So I started as a HR assistant, and I was promoted at the charity to a HR officer. I then moved to a startup, and I was a people operations associate, and that was completely standalone, reporting into the COO. And then more recently moved to Lottie, where I was hired as a people manager, and recently, last year, was promoted to senior people manager. So
amazing. Such a good career journey. Let's get into high performance. What you're doing at Lottie and the award that Lottie have won is very much a testament to everything that's going on within the organisation. And as part of a business strategy, there is always a people strategy that underpins it. How would you define high performance, and what are usually the factors that contribute towards it?
So I would define a high-performing team as a team that are really pushing their full potential. So are they achieving, exceeding either their personal goals, their business goals, or both? At Lottie, our values very much empower a high-performing team. So we look a lot around ownership. So really owning those problems and initiatives end to end, showing that colleagues can rely on you. We have impact, which is used a lot, that word at Lottie. So it's the impact that you'll have on the team, or it might be the client, the customer, but also potentially the revenue as well, which is obviously very helpful. And then we have nimble, so that's about adaptability and how we can adapt to change, particularly in startups. That happens every week at the moment. And then the last one, which is very important for us, is kindness. So how can we spread positivity, not just in the work that we're doing for our customers and our clients, but also within the team as well.
Have you found that having a core set of values has really helped with the clarity piece for what a high-performing team looks like at Lottie?
Definitely, yeah. I think having those values and understanding what they mean for the team and how you can make that impact within your role, like as soon as you get into the business, and yeah, what are those milestones you can hit to really push forward your role when you first join.
With the team that you've got currently, I've done a bit of research online and I've seen that you are going into your next growth phase within the business as well. A real core piece that I'd love to touch on is how do we pre-onboard and onboard candidates that we then continue into them being employees and team members? How can an organisation ensure that they have an effective pre-onboarding and onboarding for a high-performance team?
So I think first impressions count massively. It really helps set the tone for the individual of what's expected of them when they come into the business. So I mean, it's very difficult sometimes when there's only a few of you in the team or you're a standalone. I think one of the key things for us over the last few months has been automation and how we can really automate some of those processes, but still ensure that they have touch points across their pre-onboarding and also their onboarding once they're in with us. So in terms of pre-onboarding, as soon as somebody's signed their contract, they're obviously uploaded to our HR system and they go into what we call our pre-onboarding flow. Mm-hmm. And they're contacted from 3 weeks out from joining every single week. And they're slowly sort of fed information that they need in order to just really start feeling like they're part of the business, mm-hmm. and really start to embed them much quicker. I think when it comes to onboarding itself and that first day in the office, it sounds really simple, but do you have a desk? Do you have a laptop? Are you set up on all your systems to really be able to get in and hit the ground running with things? It's also the timetable that you have for the employee. I think it can be really easy just to say, this is a new starter, and then the manager might put in a few meetings and they might put in a few meetings themselves. But what can we do as a business to really make sure they understand how we run, how we make money, or the different products that we offer? And so, yeah, we have a timetable across the week that will cover a wide variety of those things, meeting various stakeholders. We make sure they have lunch with their team on the first day. Obviously, being in an office on your first day, not sure who to go to lunch with, all those things can be quite overwhelming and like anxiety-inducing for some people. So how can we make them feel much more comfortable?
I'm going to touch on what you just said around pre-onboarding, and then we'll come on to onboarding. I think in the technical world and the digital landscape that we're all in now, a lot of the time people are missing that in-person interaction and that human element. And I'm so happy to hear that you're using a blend of both. Yes, you're using technology, but also you're still having those touch points at the same time. And that then also really sets the tone for the culture of Lottie. It lets candidates know what an experience would be like in their employee journey. You mentioned around then the onboarding piece. I'm curious to know, do you think it's important to be intentional with an onboarding structure for any new hire who joins a business?
Yes, definitely. I think also consistency is pretty key, making sure that, we have we call them modules, but like meetings with the various stakeholders. So we have core ones. That would be one with myself as a HR induction, one with their manager, one with someone in each of our products, and then also one with our commercial director talking about how the business runs. But then we have those optional ones where there are various parts of the business that some people would be more relevant than others. So whether that is deep diving a bit more into SEO or CRM, paid marketing, or it might be learning more about what our care experts do and what the commercial team do, or even like engineering and that side of the business too. So yeah, definitely very intentional, but then also probably looking with the manager at those key milestones that employee needs to hit. So having almost like a ramping schedule. So, by week 1, we would have expected you to do these things. It means also when they have a quiet moment, they can go back to the document and they can see, okay, I should have been doing this. Maybe I can spend some time learning more about this part of the sector. So yeah, having those in places helps to set the expectation as well.
You also mentioned around the basics. So I love to call it having the brilliant basics within your first day that sometimes we may not necessarily think about, but we should, around like a laptop, a desk space. Does somebody know where the toilets are? Like, we should be taking the awkwardness out of someone's first day. It can be incredibly nerve-wracking. I actually read a statistic recently that said 69% of employees are likely to last between 3 years or more if they are onboarded successfully. And it's such a strategic move, but it elevates your retention at the same time. So knowing that, what strategies outside of onboarding and pre-onboarding could we be doing as leaders? You spoke then around your modules that you have, but what can we be doing as leaders?
So I think from the absolute top down is really setting that clear vision and goal for the business. How are you communicating that to the team and leading by example? So the behaviours that you want to see from your team, are you embodying them yourself? As a people team, that we can look to help implement our frameworks. So if you look at competency frameworks across roles, where are people at the moment? What do they need to do in order to be able to get to the next level so they can really see their progression within the business? I think that helps motivate people as well. We partner a lot with managers on that and how performance reviews are assessed to really make sure that those processes are fair. And learning and development is another section that we could look at as a people team. So we have learning with Lottie sessions, and these sessions are put on once a month. They can be work related or non-work related. And it really is another chance for people to learn various different things. We also look at putting together more recently a training catalogue. So we have a learning and development budget, and how can we help individuals find things that would be suitable for them and their skills gaps. So working with managers on putting that together based off recommendations that they may have from courses that they've done, so that it makes it much more easy for people to go ahead and book those courses or webinars or books, whatever that might be for them. And then the final one is that manager enablement. So what are the tools that we put in place in order to be able to help managers have consistency across the business, but also have those tools to be able to manage effectively? So more recently, we put together a manager's guide, and it has a module on each part of the employee life cycle. And then we put in a training session for each of those. It's been going on for about 6 months now, so it's still going on. We're nearly done. But yeah, it's just a 45-minute session for managers to come together, deep dive into those particular topics in a lot more detail. But then also a chance for managers to share their experiences in a safe space and kind of build that manager community a little bit more.
I absolutely love that you've just mentioned that you're focusing on manager enablement. Often we become managers and we don't get the investment or the training, or we don't potentially know how to be a manager as well. So I'm curious to know, what sort of feedback are you getting from managers with the enablement practices that you're putting in place? And the second part, what impact are you seeing in your team and your culture through performance?
I think It's been really helpful, particularly when we're onboarding new managers. We have everything in one place. They're able to read through it in their own time and see how we operate as a business at Lottie as managers. So I think that can be really helpful. I think the biggest thing of feedback that we've had so far is that space for managers to speak freely to each other and have that safe space. So I think after we've finished this training, we're going to look at how we can have almost like manager forums or manager sort of community hours. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be called yet or how it's going to look, but how we can really make sure managers are continued having those conversations. I would say this time last year, managers were probably much more siloed to their teams, and we've definitely made a conscious effort across the business in lots of other various ways as well, and much more collaborative.
Collaboration is key as well, not just in the silo, as you've mentioned. For a business to work effectively, we've got to work across departments as well, especially to meet our commercial goals. As managers as well, it can be incredibly isolating. The fact that you guys are bringing people together is so key for their development, because one of the pieces that I definitely wasn't told when I progressed to a management level is your work will shift to, rather than doing 100% of the tasks that you did previously and why you're essentially there, when you move into a management role, 80% of your time will be managing others. Which is quite huge, really, that people don't talk about, because we are great at what we do on a technical level, and we're not all natural people leaders, as much as I think we all wish we were sometimes.
Definitely.
I want to jump back slightly to learnings with Lottie, lunch with Lottie.
Learning with Lottie.
Learning with Lottie. So learning with Lottie, I actually saw a post that you made on this recently, and the impact already, just in terms of how you are communicating, that the team are responding to that, seems really significant already, because you're not just stopping the door at work, you're opening it outside of that, which contributes to your culture. And similar sort of question, what impact are you noticing by having those collaborative opportunities with other employees and not just necessarily managers? What impact are you noticing in your culture and a high performance of the team?
I think you're definitely seeing people getting to know people within other teams a lot more. As the team gets bigger, and we've grown quite a lot over the last few years, it's very easy to not know someone in a different team to you. So I think that's really helped. And it means people can get to know each other on a little bit more of a personal level if it's non-work related, or if it is work related, they know that they're an expert in this field. So they're able to feel more comfortable reaching out to somebody and collaborating with them.
We've touched on collaboration. We've touched on all the different strategies that people leaders, and for our other listeners, that they can proactively do now. And I want to move on to engagement mechanisms, specifically feedback. How can we enable feedback within our culture with the end goal of high performance?
So I think when it comes to managers, so manager report feedback, there are a number of different ways we can do it. So we have performance reviews every 6 months, which is obviously a much more formal way of giving feedback, but really encouraging managers to have that mid-check-in between those reviews, and then having those one-to-ones and having dedicated feedback sessions to help build that trust with their report. I think that's super important. But then as a business and also as a HR team, so how can the wider business feedback to me or the team on what we are doing right, what might need changing, where the issues are? And we have a number of different ways that we do that. So we have Life at Lottie meetings, and these are, again, on a monthly basis, and that's run by myself and the founder. And then we rotate a member of each team within that meeting on the monthly basis. And that's an opportunity for people to come to us. It's almost a bit like a focus group. And we discuss processes or policies that we have in place, celebrations that we have coming up over the next month, so they can really feed into that social element as well. And I think these meetings have been a really great way for teams to be able to feel feedback, but also feel like they're being heard. And where we can, we're actioning those things that they need. Sometimes they're very small things, and sometimes obviously they're much bigger things that might take a little bit longer to do. So that's one way of doing it. But then we also give them a chance to give anonymous feedback. So we have that through bi-weekly pulse surveys. It's just 2 short questions that they answer about how happy they are and how motivated they are. And then we report on that on a monthly basis to the senior management team, and we keep an eye on that to make sure that the team are happy. And if there are cases where they're not, what can we do to bring that up, or can we dig deeper into what that issue might be? And then the last one is our engagement surveys, and those happen every 6 months. They're obviously much bigger surveys. We have maybe 50 questions in there, and that's to really get a feel across everything within the business. And that also gives us an NPS score. NPS scores can be a little bit hit and miss sometimes, and obviously they're just that 1 point in a 6-month period. So sometimes it needs to be taken with a little bit pinch of salt, or context at least to that. But yeah, that's as well why we do the pulse surveys, so that we can keep an eye on things from that perspective as well.
It sounds like as well you have feedback as part of your culture. You live and breathe it every single day, whether that is through your monthly meetings, the bi-weekly pulse surveys, or your 6-month engagement surveys. Do you feel like having all of those mechanisms enhances psychological safety at Lottie?
Yes, definitely. I think you definitely have to act on the feedback that you receive. I think if you just took in all these surveys and took in all this data and you weren't doing anything off the back of them, probably not. But we make a real effort for that to really lead the people projects that we have for that following 3 to 6 months. So yes, I would like to hope so at Lottie, definitely.
I say this to all of my clients as well. When it comes to questions of like, how do I build a high performance team? How do I increase engagement? As a business, you have to be ready to receive that feedback at the same time. If you're not ready to receive the feedback from your team, my opinion is we shouldn't be sending out surveys. I personally actually think it causes more chaos if we're asking for employees to share their voice and we're giving them that illusion of safety in their comms, but then not doing anything about it or not communicating what we're doing about it. So it's definitely something that if a business is ready to accept that feedback, be intentional about it, because the outcome, you'll see a huge difference within the culture of your team. And even if it's something that you can't do now, like he just said, there's sometimes things that you can implement quite quickly, and sometimes there are things that take a little bit longer. But as long as we manage the communication of that, we can start to add to the culture and building a healthy high performance team as well. With that in mind, how can organizations maintain high performance at times when it might be a little bit emotionally charged?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting topic, particularly in startups. Mm-hmm. I think there is a lot of pressure, and people can often feel stressed quite easily, or burnout can be quite common as well. And so it's what things can you put in place to proactively help? I think open communication is definitely one with your manager. So if you're struggling with the workload that you have, are you able to sit down with them and prioritize what actually needs to be done today? Because in a startup, everything needed doing yesterday, right? So yeah, how can you prioritize that? And also, if you're struggling, you can say to your manager, I'm struggling at the moment. Are there any resources that I can be pointed to? Do you have any suggestions of what I could do in this situation? We also make sure we promote a good work-life balance. So I think ensuring that you set your own boundaries. I think everyone has a different perspective on work-life balance and what it is for them. For some people, it's just making sure they take a lunch break. But for others, it's making sure they finish on time so they can be with their family. It's a wide spectrum. So making sure you set your own boundaries. And then also, what are the resources that we can give individuals, whether that's the benefits that we offer, the workshops we might put on. We also have a mental health hub where we have various resources and signposting that people can go to when they're struggling. But it also outlines in there what mental health first aiders do. So I'm a mental health first aider myself, and then we have a couple of others in the team as well. Kind of getting people to really understand what we do and how we can support them in that too.
It can be hard as well in particular situations where you do need to have difficult conversations, and sometimes we can be emotionally charged. But I completely agree with what you've said around making sure that we're supporting our teams during those moments. So whether that is something we can do internally, you just mentioned all the resources that you have, but also potentially signposting to external. We don't have all the answers as much as people do think the HR function has all the answers. We don't, but we'll definitely find where they are and we can signpost effectively. How do you find when it comes to delivering feedback, we spoke around the feedback mechanisms, are there any methods in terms of delivering feedback in the situations when it is emotionally charged that you found the most helpful?
I think being able to, firstly, find out what's going on for them. So on a personable level, is there anything going on at home that might be affecting their work? I think often sometimes personal life can bleed into work, particularly when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, those kinds of things. And so, understanding from them what might be going on for them. If there doesn't seem to be anything going on from that perspective, or if there is, it's being as clear as we can to that person when we're giving them feedback. So rather than just off the cuff, feedback that you give, have you planned your feedback? Have you got solid examples of times where that may have happened and the impact that it had on you or the team or the individual? And I think that can often help.
A thread from what you were just saying as well, I think is all around trust. And when you start to build those solid relationships with your team members as a people manager and people leader, people are more likely to be receptive. At the same time, you just said around not giving off-the-cuff feedback. If you've already got feedback built in as part of your culture, it's less of a shock. I always say performance management conversations shouldn't be a shock. There should be no surprises at performance management conversations. We should be having those quite fluidly. And I do think that goes back to that trust piece.
100%. Yeah, definitely agree.
Talking about trust, how can people managers start to build trust with their team that would then be reflected through high performance?
So I completely agree. No surprises is something that I try and live by where I can, because performance review shouldn't be a situation where you're feeling super anxious because you don't know what's coming. It's keeping those open comms. So building that psychological safety within the team, making sure that people feel as though they're able to take those risks and make mistakes. It's totally okay to make mistakes. It's how do we learn from mistakes and how do we then communicate that to the team? I've definitely seen examples in other organisations, not where I've worked, but from friends and things like that, where there is definitely that blame culture. And I think the blame culture can take so much energy and time away from actually, this was the mistake, we've admitted the mistake, these are the things we're doing to improve on it, and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I think that's a much more positive way, and that helps build trust, right? So I think that's really big. I think for managers as well, showing that you have dependability. So can the team rely on you to be honest, be candid, give honest feedback? But also, if there are blockers, if they've asked for some work to be reviewed and they've given you a specific deadline, are you able to meet that? And if not, are you letting them know? I think sometimes when you're sat there with a blocker, it can be quite frustrating and you probably chip away at that trust a little bit. And then finally, modelling those behaviours that you want them to have. Are you doing it too? So yeah, really leading by example.
Such an important point. How can we expect our team to act a certain way when potentially we may be doing the opposite? It also has such an impact on trust that it breaks it, which then doesn't contribute towards the high performance that every company is striving for, but also that every employee is striving for as well. We spend so much of our lives. I think I actually saw a LinkedIn post. It's something like we spend 90,000 hours at work.
Insane.
And we want to be in an environment where we feel trusted, one where we can feel fulfilled, and one where we can thrive. Another really key piece to that, and I'm noticing this at the moment, is around purposeful work. How do you create purpose at Lottie for the team?
I think we're quite lucky with the mission that we have. Our mission is to elevate later life. So we help families find care for their loved ones. And so we're definitely a mission-led business, which 100% helps with that purpose. And that's the thing that gets you up in the morning, particularly for anyone themselves that has gone through finding care for a loved one. It can be such a difficult journey. So yeah, being mission-led is really helpful. I think another really important thing is communicating goals from the top down. So having that clear vision from the top, having those KPIs, OKRs, whatever it is that your business calls them. And then from there, breaking it down by team and individual. What is it that you need to be doing daily, weekly, monthly in order to help hit those goals for the business?
I love that. And that is such a good way for us to summarize and bring this to an end. I know all of our listeners are going to have so many good takeaways, and they may also be in your DMs. So I want to send my apologies for that now. Before we fully wrap up, I have one final question. Looking back on your career, what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I think it would be to just dive right in and go for it. There's so much opportunity out there for people in the adult world, we'll call it. And I think just diving in and trying new things, pushing boundaries and getting out of your comfort zone are the things that are really going to push you forward. So yeah, that would probably be what it is.
And the early days of our career are our best. That's our time to explore and learn really fast at the same time. Thank you so much for being on this episode. I've loved this conversation. I just know our listeners are going to be obsessed with this. So thank you so much.